two F's from Springfield, Illinois. Dan, how's you?
Eyes be good. I got to play around a disc golf beforehand, and I frantically put together my notes before we started. So here's to doing things like we normally do, and that's just.
I thought you were playing one after.
I may still try to play one after. We'll see.
Okay. That's why we were here earlier, is because you're doing one after. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait,
Somebody
did you move the
cancel.
show up so you could rush more?
I think so. I think that's just how I figured it out that way.
Oh, man. Yeah, we learned before the show that we're way better at prepping when we just try to rush to do it versus when we try to do it ahead of time, because we forget crap when we try to do it ahead of time. So always prepared, never organized, and really not even that prepared, I guess. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. We got a good show here for you today. Before we get started, and to tell you what that show is, which you already know if you listened last week, you can follow us on Twitter at BeerfieldFF. Subscribe, like, hit the notification button on YouTube, Beerfield Fantasy Football. He's at 30 BFF. I'm at Hot BFF. I think I said that already. Instagram, Untapped, Beerfield FF. Yeah, I wasn't looking at the notes, so I was hoping I got all that right. We have merch, which none of us are wearing. We're actually representing in the last 2 years of Scott Fish, which you can see those shirts on YouTube. They're pretty.
Always pretty.
Hey, we got a listener league announcement for you, by the way. So we'll start promoting this week. IDP did win the Twitter vote, so we are going to do an IDP league. 12 team. So we're going to do the entry thing again with a live drawing, slow draft formatted if we can. 1 entry for a screenshot of you subscribed on YouTube, 2 entries for merch, 2 entries for FF Expo ticket purchase. Send us screenshots of the ticket purchase in YouTube, or email us for merch, and we'll get you involved in that. Again, at Beerfield FF on Twitter to send those over. IDP Superflex, actually. We're doing both. So
perfect.
I won't go over the roster details right now. We'll cover those whenever people join. Speaking of the Midwest FF Expo, you can find us there August 18th, I believe, in Canton, Ohio. Promo code BEER to save yourself $5 on those tickets. Got quite a good lineup of people. A couple podcast stages going. We'll have a chunk of time on that stage. We'll have some merch out there. There's going to be some people with some nice giveaways. So come up, hang out for the weekend, see the Hall of Fame, visit a conference, chill. As for the show today, we are done with division previews. So thank you for listening to those for the last 2 weeks, where we kind of gave our thoughts on every player. Now we're going to take those thoughts and we're going to try to parlay those into rankings and actually start giving empirical data as to why we like people, where we like them, why we have the feelings as such, and what the consensus of Dan and I says our rankings should be. So this is where we start the trek towards redraft season, towards all of your fantasy football drafts. We're going to start prepping you for that today. But as always, first, we got to tell the people what we're drinking.
What's fueling Beerfield?
Dan is a real butt face for his beer because it doesn't distribute down here. And when I saw this announced the other day, I was super excited about it. So I'm incredibly jealous over what he has.
I have Strawberry M43. It's from Old Nation. It's basically just adding strawberry to the already iconic M43 New England style IPA. Buddy of ours should have gotten his 4-pack. Should be sending hopefully a can to our lovely host Hopper here as soon as possible. Otherwise, I will yell at him. But I'll let you guys know, and him as well, how this beer tastes.
Morgan Jones, if you're listening, that's for you. M43, for those that don't know, they really, at least in our region, kind of kicked off the hazy craze. They were the first one to really break the market, and everybody fell in love with it. So they started distributing it here all the time, and everybody else just kind of followed suit with hazies. M43 was the icebreaker on that. As for me, I have something kind of exciting. It's unconventional IPA, and what makes it unconventional is it's a nitro IPA with vanilla, brewed with experimental hops. It's a collaboration between Four Hands Brewing and Trophy Brewing. We'll let you know what I think about midway through. I'm a little picky with when nitro is used and how, so it'll be an interesting review. We'll get to that about midway through the show. Let's get into the news.
News.
lots to get in news-wise, but let's go ahead and start with the big one this week. The NFL's officially announced that they will not suspend wide receiver Tyreek Hill for accusations that he assaulted his son. So, personal issues aside, because that doesn't affect your fantasy performance, and we understand some people will not draft him or will refuse to draft him because of that, but personal issues aside, we're here to analyze his on-field performance. So, the fact that he's not going to be suspended, where does that slot him into your wide receiver rankings?
You'll likely be, in terms of points per game, he's my number 2. In terms of actual rankings, he'll probably slide into top 5. I think at number 5 for me. Offense really hasn't changed since last year. He's still going to be the massive field stretcher that he is. They're still going to use him in ways that you really can't use the same kind of receiver in the league. So for Hill, it's he just kind of falls back where he finished as last year as a top 5 receiver.
Yep, and he will be top 5 for me as well, likely my 3, behind Adams and Hopkins. But he was my number 1 in points per game, but then I got to fade that a little bit because he does usually tweak something at some point during the year, and risk rating as well. I'm still more confident with Hopkins over him, and probably Adams too, just from a consistency standpoint. So
yep,
I am big on the Tyreek Hill bandwagon as a fantasy player, not as a person. So, but him not being suspended, if you got him in Scott Fishbowl, if you've already drafted, if you traded for him because people were pissed off at him, good job. That window's closed.
I saw someone in our pick 9 group chat during the Scott Fishbowl got him in the 7th round.
Oh my goodness! They got a steal.
Got a steal. I was looking at him in the 5th round. He got sniped from me. I say sniped, but he got picked in the 4th. A few picks before me. So
there is not one person that didn't think he was going to get suspended. And as much as I think Zeke is also a piece of shit human, he can not have any proof for something that is less severe, just him being a douchebag, and still get suspended. So I thought there was no way Tyreek Hill got off. But the NFL, once again, completely inconsistent.
Yeah, we've touched on this a bunch, but it's bad.
Yeah. Well, I bring that up to segue into Zeke Elliott. He's privately said he's going to hold out if he doesn't have a new contract by the start of camp, which might actually work against him because he has to be in camp by August 6th anyway. Otherwise, he doesn't accrue a season towards free agency. So the Cowboys get another year of him on his rookie deal. He has no leverage here.
I know. It's. I mean, I guess if it's hard, but they don't even want to pay Zeke right now. It's all Dak and Cooper. He's 2
years away.
They don't have to. Lowish on his, on their bar. They want to get their quarterback of the future locked up. They want to get Cooper locked up, the receiver of the future. So in a league that's all passing and even going, is especially continuing to move towards a pass first league, Zeke and the style, of the back that he is, yes, he's very balanced of a running back, but it's not good for him, especially given his track record.
It is important to know that this is all hearsay. It hasn't come from Zeke himself like it has Melvin Gordon in the media or anything else. But a holdout would be interesting. What are you going to hold out for a week and then show up? Because if you don't, you lose leverage in a year when you can hold out again.
I don't see him holding out. Like I said before, it makes absolutely no sense. If he's looking to get paid, especially for the running back position where you want to get your money early on because you have the shortest life in the NFL, I just don't see it happening. Not now.
No, not with the lack of leverage he has.
Yeah.
Speaking of, not holdouts, but I guess lack of leverage, Martavis Bryant's applied for reinstatement. He's been suspended for pot yet again.
I'm surprised this isn't in the laugh out loud news.
Yeah,
I feel like we've regurgitated. It was just sad because it's just for smoking weed, and the last 2 guys we've talked about have obviously done far worse. So,
yep. Speaking of suspensions and weed, Vikings running back Rock Thomas has been suspended 3 games to go along with his 3-year probation. And
yeah, he's done. I don't see how he
makes the roster.
Yeah, I don't either.
He wasn't that good. And then
he flashed, but you spent a 3rd round pick that you traded up for Mike Boone's already better overall and all around running back as your number 3 with Amir Abdullah there as your punt returner. I don't see room for Rock Thomas on this roster.
I don't either. And then Julio Jones is expected to report at the beginning of Falcons camp, and in fact has. So he's also in a contract dispute, but he is not going to hold out.
Yeah, he's Makes sense for him to get his money because this might be his last big term contract, given his age, but he also needs to continue to keep playing. So,
Yep. All right, on to the roster news. 49ers kicker Robbie Gould has ended his holdout. He has signed a 2-year, $10.5 million contract. The 2-year option worth another $9 million. The 49ers would not give in to his trade or release demands so he could go back to Chicago. So he just signed for more than what the franchise tag was.
That's hilarious. I love it.
Yep. And then the Eagles have signed running back Darren Sproles to a 1-year contract. Obviously, does not guarantee him a roster spot, but you got to figure as a return guy that he might have the inside shot at that last running back spot over
He just
the
got to
Josh
stay
Adams.
healthy. He just has to stay healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I like for him to get another full season in, but he's getting there in age too.
Yeah, poor guy's trying to go out on his terms and hasn't been able to do it the last 2 seasons. He just wants to retire.
Like that's right. He's like Steve Smith again.
Injury gods, just let him retire.
Please.
On his own terms. In injury news, DeAndre Hopkins will be in camp on the active PUP list after tearing ligaments from the bone in the Texans playoff game against the Colts. The active PUP list, which you'll hear a few times throughout the day, means it can be reactivated at any point in time. He's not, inactive or anything like that. He can come off at any point during camp, but he'll likely be eased into it. So,
yeah,
just a situation to monitor.
Yep.
Demarius Thomas and Sony Michel will also begin camp on the active PUP list. Michelle following a knee procedure, Thomas following a late season Achilles tear. Again, just monitor those situations. Thomas, it wouldn't be surprising if he starts the season on the PUP and doesn't come back till after the first 6 weeks. Michelle, I wouldn't expect to be in jeopardy of missing week 1.
Yeah, I agree with both.
Yep. Philip Lindsay's practicing without limitations. This is after an offseason of speculation around his wrist, so he apparently is good to go.
He's playing. He's been taking all the first team snaps too.
Yeah,
apparently.
Well, he was getting first team reps, but I also saw a report that said that they're still expecting an even split, so we'll see.
True.
Free agent running back Alex Collins broke his leg.
That stinks.
Oh well. In the ongoing saga of Titans tight ends, Jonnu Smith is questionable for week 1 already. Delaney Walker is expected to be ready for week 1, so already terming people as questionable, I guess.
It's not looking good for Jonnu Smith early season.
Yeah, it was a late season MCL tear, so that would make sense.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Sanders has avoided the active PUP list to start Broncos camp. It is expected he'll be eased into it the first 2 to 3 weeks and then be a full go, but he is not on the active PUP list. So
that's just incredible.
Yeah,
his recovery time. I'm going to be really surprised if he's worth the damn the first half of the season. And I pray that he's that he avoids any more setbacks or injuries because of it, as we've seen with hamstring injuries after a player injures their ACL. So let's just hope he can remain healthy and be something.
We'll see. I mean, I would think that they wouldn't take any risk with him or try to rush him back. So, I mean, the fact that this is coming out to me says that he very well may be full speed by week 1.
Yeah.
It would be weird, but I mean, Richard Sherman came back last year or 2 years ago from the same injury in about the same time frame. So
that's true. That's right. It was.
Yep. Rodney Anderson's likely going to open the Bengals season on the reserve PUP list, which means he's not expected back till like week 6.
Just doing things that he was doing in college.
Yep.
Hurts.
Speaking of people being hurt, Ravens wide receiver Marquise Brown's going to open the camp on the active non-football injury list. So many lists.
There are a lot of lists.
Yeah. I don't even know what half of them mean.
I don't either.
The Cardinals have placed Charles Clay on the active PUP list, which, woohoo.
Well,
and then in retirement news, Bengals left guard Clint Bowling is retiring. And with the loss of Jonah Hill, they have just a giant hole on that line now. Not that the line was good, but they have a giant hole on the interior of that line now that somebody's going to have to try to fill. So Joe Mixon, I think I saw a stat earlier today from the footballers that he had 2.9 yards before contact, which, behind an atrocious line. But, I mean, that speaks volumes to the interior offensive line when you're getting 2 to 3 yards before you're even contacted, as well as the running back's driftiness. But losing a piece of that is not going to bode well.
Yeah, I mean, it was a horrible line last year. I mean, obviously, these injuries and the now retirement is another big impact to it. But we'll see if Zach Taylor can find ways to poor offensive line with a very talented
Just run him
running
off
back.
tackle all the time.
That's what I was going to say. Just a lot of screens
Yeah.
and a lot of off
outside
tackles and
runs.
sweeps. A lot of outside runs.
All right, that's it for the news. We are in hype season, so let's find out which of this hype we're drinking the Kool-Aid on and what we're not.
Are we drinking the Kool-Aid?
All right, going to start it off in Arizona. David Johnson's receiving skills will come to the forefront under Cliff Kingsbury.
I mean, it should be. I mean, you have to buy this.
Yep, I agree. I'm buying it. I think you're buying it. I think anybody that's projected David Johnson's buying that if he comes back to, top half RB1 relevance, it's going to be because of his receiving skills. And I think most people are buying into that narrative.
Yeah, I think that's pretty safe to assume.
Yep. The Titans plan to, quote, ride Derrick Henry in his contract year.
I am totally drinking this Kool-Aid. I fully expect him to ride him to the ground. And we'll see next year.
Got to know before you pay him, right?
Yeah, I mean, this offense is not. Mariota hasn't taken the next step. Obviously, he's been banged up, so that it's a big hindrance to that. Tannehill likely isn't a long-term option. You're going into arguably 2 draft years in 2020 and 2021 draft that have an even better QB draft than this year's. So, not surprised there.
No, and with the defensive head coach, we've seen that a lot. Henry is the type of between the tackles banger that once he gets ahead of speed is hard to stop. Finished last year incredibly well. I'm buying this as well. I think Deion Lewis still has a role, but I think it's going to be more shifted towards Henry like it was at the end of last year. I think that's more of the norm than what the beginning of last year was.
Yeah.
All right. Austin Hooper is ready to go to another level with his play in 2019 per Coach Dan Quinn.
Yeah, I'm buying it. I mean, we saw the start of it last year, and I think just with more, with this receiving core becoming even more comfortable with really, entering year 2, that just opens up the field more for Austin Hooper, and it adds the main, the main red zone option for Atlanta. He's the guy that could jump into the, tier 2 of elite tight ends.
Yeah. Well, him and Calvin Ridley, who was a monster in the red zone last year, too. But yeah. I'm buying this as well. Austin Hooper had a mini breakout last year. It's been rumored for a couple of years. I think Nick was on this 2 years ago, and he might have just been 2 years too early.
He was on a big last year, and it finally paid off for him.
Yep. So I really think that he does take up to the next level. I think that he could slot in probably behind that Kittle Ertz tier and kind of lead that next tier of tight ends, whatever that may become.
Yeah.
All right, somebody named Taylor Jenkins of some place called Pewter Report is projecting 45 targets for Peyton Barber this season.
That's very specific.
I almost put this in the laugh out loud section.
That is oddly specific. I mean, you keep hearing reports of it's been really mixed bags between Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones, and some of the hype threads I've seen on Twitter for Peyton Barber is built pretty well for him. He's still just a guy running back, but
yeah. Well, and if it's not Ronald Jones, you'd got to think that Andre Ellington's coming in on third down.
Yeah,
so is an Arians guy. It's not the way that he projected it was. Well, Jaquiz Rogers isn't there, so we're gonna give it all to Peyton Barber.
I'm not buying him getting 45 targets.
I'm not either. I'm not even buying him getting 25 targets.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he. I mean, I can see 25, but I'm definitely not seeing anything more than 30.
Easier for me to see 25 if I break out the telescope and maybe put some binoculars up against the telescope and then a magnifying glass in front of that.
Put your rose tinted glasses on.
If I put it on one of those microscope slides and zoom in to 20 billion times, I can see it.
Yes.
All right. Vic Toffer of The Athletic reports that Jalen Richard is going to lose a good portion of his receiving work to rookie running back Josh Jacobs.
It's hard for me to buy this because of how good Richard was last year and just how much Derek Carr relied on him out of the backfield. I can see this being first half of the season, no, and then second half as Jacobs gets more acclimated into the offense, gets more comfortable, especially if he's already have the first and second down work from Doug Martin. I could buy this. I'm not buying it right now, though. I'm not quite there yet on Josh Jacobs as being the every down back week 1.
Yeah, for me, it's I'm the same way. It's going to depend on training camp. I am not. Yeah. I could see this being the case. I really could. I'm not drinking it yet. I have bought the Kool-Aid powder and taken it home. I have the pitcher. I haven't quite started measuring out the water or the sugar yet, but I have the Kool-Aid powder. I'm just not drinking it at the moment.
I bought the pack. I went home. I got my favorite flavor.
Yep.
I'm just not ready if I want to pour vodka in it yet either.
Yep. Not ready to mix that up yet. All right, last one. Monday morning quarterbacks Albert Breer believes the Bills could cut or trade LaShawn McCoy before week 1.
You talk. I'm going to look at his. I don't know if you've seen it. If you looked it up, I'll see what the contract is.
I didn't look the contract up, but I wouldn't be surprised with this on the surface. I don't know that they have another in-house option, though, if they want to have a running back. So I don't believe in Devin Singletary.
I mean, this is the last year of his deal.
Yeah.
He's a UFA last year, obviously. Because of that, you draft Devin Singletary, you bring in TJ Yeldon, you for some reason bring in Frank Gore. I mean, McCoy could be the odd man out, as we just mentioned. You've brought in 3 new running backs this year.
I think it's going to depend. I think that if Singletary shows in camp he's got it, Gore shows he's got more left in the tank, and Yeldon shows he can be even a bit of effective as he was, you could see this be a 3-headed monster RBBC with Yeldon and Gore and Singletary, and then get rid of McCoy's contract. Although they're not pressed up against the cap, he's a UFA after the season anyway. So unless they're tanking again for draft picks, I don't really see the logic behind it.
That or if a playoff team or a team shows, they lose a running back, let's say let's say the Chargers trade Melvin Gordon or something happens to another running back.
If they can turn it into draft capital, they will. I think a trade is more likely than a cut.
He might be more, if anything, he could be, a mid-season before deadline type of trade like we saw with J.J. a couple years ago. So that could be, that could be the case.
I think that they're not going to cut him for nothing, though.
Yeah, I don't either.
Not with him being in the last year of his deal. I think that it's a trade or he just rides out the season with them.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the Laugh Out Loud news. One of our 3 favorite teams to feature in this segment. It's prominently featured in this segment.
Laugh Out Loud news of the week.
So one of my favorite things in news segments is when a GM says one thing and then 3 days later the head coach says something different. Broncos GM John Elway is, quote, excited about the quarterback situation, which, by the way, is the first time anybody's ever been excited about Joe Flacco, including his wife. And Vic Fangio, even the dog doesn't get excited about Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco comes home, the dog just sitting there like, whatever.
The dog gives him one wag of the tail and leaves.
Doesn't even wag the tail. Just kind of casually looks at the front door because the dog is not even excited when Joe Flacco gets home.
The dog's unamused.
Vic Fangio later said that Drew Lock is, quote, not a quarterback yet. So I'm not sure. Water boy, clipboard holder, wide receiver. I don't know what Drew Lock is, but it's apparently not a quarterback yet.
That's not good for Drew Lock.
He's not even in his final form.
Yeah, he's in a second evolution. He hasn't even reached his third evolution. He's only level 18.
No, he's the Caterpie. He hasn't even hit his cocoon stage.
Yeah, it's not good for Denver, but with only a second round, investment in Drew Lock, it's not like they can go out and draft one next season if they feel like the team doesn't take the next step with it. So, I'm not excited about the QB situation. John Elway's one of the more overrated GMs in the NFL. So
he's done nothing good since he got there. Nothing.
Nothing that, yeah. Whatever.
He cut the quarterback of their future. Chad Kelly. All right. Let's talk rankings and some more exciting quarterbacks than Joe Flacco. Yeah. Spoilers, by the way. We might say Joe Flacco one other time in this episode.
Maybe.
By the way, I have no idea what this drop is, so I'll be surprised just with the listeners. Dan still won't get to hear it.
Rankings.
That was a little jig. It was groovy. I like that one.
Oh, man.
All right. Let's go ahead and get into the rankings. So, first off, the way that we do this, rankings are all based on half-point PPR. It doesn't so much matter for quarterbacks. Half-point PPR, 6-point touchdown, I believe, or 5.
You did 6? I did 4 based on my... That doesn't matter per rankings.
Doesn't matter. It's all...
Doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Everything's relative.
Yeah.
As long as you did yours one way and I did mine the other way, it's all relative.
That's
anyway,
right.
So we're going to go through each tier. We're not going to talk about every player. If you want to hear about every player, go back and listen to the division previews. We're going to call out some guys we like at each tier, tell you why we like them, why we don't, break down draft position, all of that fun stuff. So let's go ahead and start with the quarterback one. He's in a tier of his own. Let's talk Patrick Mahomes, just kind of recap expectations, and then where should he be drafted overall?
When we did this episode, the AFC West episode 2 weeks ago, we were still assuming Tyreek Hill is would have been suspended at this, would be suspended at some point in time. We still have Mahomes as a number one in his tier of his own. So the addition of Tyreek Hill back for a full 16 just adds to, he may not dip as below in his touchdown percentage regression as we all expect. Yards should be fine. The offense really hasn't changed much. So the fact that he's the 309 right now and single QB drafts is more concerning for me. The fact that I won't have any shares of him.
No, I'm not gonna have it either. And I can't really knock the 309 ADP because that's about where Rodgers has gone the last couple of years when he was setting the world on fire. I mean, 309 is typically when that first quarterback goes. It's actually a little bit less than when that happens. So can't really knock that.
Yeah. And I still think in your home leagues and your, semi-casual / competitive leagues, Mahomes will likely be higher than that. They're going to be somebody
probably. The thing to keep in mind with the ADPs we're looking at right now is it's all us nerds that are sitting here doing mock drafts right now.
Yeah.
That is, those ADPs are going to start to shift a lot here in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Oh, definitely.
Is more the casual fans start to do this. But yeah, we got him projected over 5,000 yards. I've got him at 45 touchdowns, 14 picks, over 200 rush yards before Tyreek Hill came back. I don't know that I can adjust that too much, but you get it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit lower on the touchdowns, but that's because touchdowns are hard to project.
Well, and I had faded his touchdowns a bit too, and that was the other thing I was going to bring up. I mean, there's no real reason or anything in his underlying numbers other than his danger throws, because it's Patrick Mahomes, that suggest a regression other than his touchdown rate. He had an 8.6% touchdown rate. Peyton Manning's the only person to duplicate 8+% twice in his career in the last 20 years, and he did it 9 years apart. So you don't really get that type of performance in back-to-back seasons or year in, year out. 5.5% is the average following an 8% year. 7.1% is the highest somebody's put up after an 8% year in touchdown rate. So again, touchdowns are fluky. Touchdowns are a quarterback gets their points. I do think he's the QB1. He just might be closer to the pack than we initially have him projected.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the next tier. We've got Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson. This is kind of these guys are not Patrick Mahomes level, but they're elite and they still separate themselves. So, I mean, to me, there's a distinct, this guy's got upside, this guy's safe, and this guy's you're hoping to bounce back in that tier. So for me, I think that Andrew Luck is probably the safest bet here. He's going at the 502, which is the highest of the three. Now, there's nothing that Andrew Luck did last year that says that it's not sustainable or that says that he can't repeat that. 6.1% touchdown rates, right in line. 2.3% interception rate, 639 attempts, and 4,500 yards. All of that is repeatable. We saw Drew Brees put up numbers like that year in, year out. The only concern I have with Luck is, and the biggest risk for him is just if that defense improves and if Marlon Mack can stay healthy, if they're playing with leads, those attempts are going to go down. But even then, I don't think that hurts him that much.
I mean, you saw it last year when the defense, started to take a step forward, even with the lack of running game, it started to still, use Wilkins and use Nyheim Hines in that type of role. His attempts starting to waver down, but with Luck coming off, another year removed from his shoulder injury, I still think this is his best pass catching core he's had, and this is including the receivers, tight ends, and running backs. Mm-hmm. So Luck is definitely, I would maybe say Watson's the safest given his rushing upside. But we could see Luck kind of go back to what his rushing numbers were before the shoulder injury, as now he's, as I just said, it's been a year removed from the shoulder injuries.
Well, and the other thing with the rush numbers, I don't think it's the shoulder injuries. I think it's the improved O-line. I mean, they weren't giving up sacks last year at the rate they had the last couple of years. Therefore, Andrew Luck isn't having to run for his life. He's able to stand in the pocket and throw more, which is always what Luck was best at. He has the mobility if he's under pressure to get out of there, but he's not a quarterback you're drawing up designed runs for. And I think the improved offensive line is more so than the shoulder injuries is why we saw that fall off.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, we love Luck here. It's nothing.
No. And Deshaun Watson, you segue into him in this tier. We've got Rodgers between the two, but Deshaun Watson, I think, has the most upside out of the three in this tier because of that rush upside. The 505 pass attempts is, a little concerning just because I like a bit more volume than that. But 99 rushes, that's where his floor is coming from. That is a little bit of a regression point potentially at 99 rushes, but I wouldn't expect it to be severe. Beyond that, just like Luck, everything else is sustainable for him.
I mean, you speak of poor offensive line play. Houston, obviously, very poor offensive line. I think Watson took the most sacks last year. When you have a poor offensive line, you tend to have your plays tend to break down a little bit more. Watson's a guy that can take advantage of that, having that Wilson type of ability to extend plays and make stuff happen even after a play breaks down. But with Watson, as we're likely about to mention, the touchdown rate came down from his rookie season, but so did his interception rate. And then you got to see where I think his floor is. Increased rushing numbers. If you get a healthy, at least one of these guys healthy and Fuller and Kuti, you could see Watson push to be part of that top 2 QB type of range. If Watson falls to me, in my redraft leagues in the 6th round, I'm super excited about that because I think his upside is definitely there.
Yep, he's right at the back end of the 5th right now, going at the 5'10". He is, I think, my 3. But regardless, as you mentioned, the touchdown rate, 5.1% last year, with him being able to finish top 12. That makes me feel good about it because 5.1% is not an insane number. 5% ish is just right around good. I mean, that's where the Rodgers and the Mannings and of the, not Eli obviously, but where good quarterbacks live. That's usually the floor you see in their career is about 5%. And if he gets some wide receivers healthy around him, brings up that touchdown upside or that touchdown percentage a little bit, then that is going to elevate him to the next level. And that's why I say he's got the most upside in this tier, because Andrew Luck, he's right around good, but he doesn't have, at 6.1%, you're like, okay, that's probably about average where he's going to live. With Watson, that I think that average of could come up as we see the career go on. I think he does have room to grow there.
Even with Luck's average, I believe his career average is 5.1, so he was a full percentage ahead. Now, again, I expect that to be, right in between that spot. But a guy like Rodgers, we'll segue into Rodgers here. I do agree he could be the biggest risk here. We got to kind of see what Rodgers could become in his later 30s without a dominant receiving core. Just Devontae Adams kind of gave him the number 1 guy he needs, but a lack of a number 2, no help from Jimmy Graham really. And then just the inconsistencies of your running back play and just choosing running backs, maybe play columns a part of that as well. He posted his lowest touchdown rate. I think it was like 4.7 since his rookie season. Now we'll expect that to rise. We'll expect the passing numbers to rise. They're going to play against better competition this year. He may not live up to a top 5 QB, not because of just him, but because of the quarterbacks below him that could also rise with it.
Yeah, the biggest thing with Rodgers is going to be his wide receivers coming along, and that's going to be what's going to lead to his bounce back, or whether he stays right around where he was last year, because the yards per game and yards per completion, all of that was right in line. The interception rate was lower than his career average. The touchdown rate, though, lowest since his rookie year. He needs his wide receivers to come along. He needs somebody else to step up opposite of Devontae Adams in order for him to bounce back. It's not like Deshaun Watson where he's got this big rushing floor, or Andrew Luck where he's got the best receiving core he has in years. He had the worst receiving core he's had in years last year outside of Devontae Adams. So he's really going to need them to progress in order to bounce back, which is what makes him risky, because there's no guarantee as to who those wide receivers are going to be, how they're going to mesh, or how he's going to look with a new coach. It's Aaron Rodgers. You don't normally bet against him, but which is why he's still in this tier. But at the same time, I can't really put him up with, Mahomes, or up in, above drafting him at 506 just because of the risk that's associated with that.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Moving out of that tier to the guys that just kind of missed the elite tier, we got Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson, and Cam Newton. Dan, you got Carson Wentz as your number 4. He's consensus 5. Go ahead and tell us what you love about Carson Wentz this year.
I think for me, again, I always speak about players coming off of their major injuries the season afterwards. Once again a full year removed from his ACL injury, he came back too soon. I think most people would assume that was the case. He got other injuries. The coaching staff got called out for not being great when it comes to dealing with those type of injuries. I think he had neck and shoulder injuries. So for me, it's year 3 Wentz, best receiving core, best pass catching core that he's had in his 3 years so far. You bring in Deshaun Watson, who's Deshaun Jackson, excuse me, who's a massive upgrade over Torrey Smith in his breakout season, and then I guess Nelson Aguilar kind of filled that role last year when Smith moved on to Carolina. You put Nelson Aguilar back into the slot. You got Dallas Goedert, going in his second year. You drafted Jaws. I'm a big fan of him, being the backup to Alshon if Alshon gets hurt. You add in, Miles Sanders, who's likely the best pass catching back already if he can, at least enter the season healthy. So for me, it's there's a lot of upside there. He's an 8th round. I think his ADP is in the 8th round, right in the middle there as the 8th or 9th quarterback taken. I'm willing to take my risk on a guy like that because I think his upside's there. His 2017 numbers, if you played out the full 16, he would have been a top 3, if not the number 1 quarterback that year. He would have posted likely top 3 numbers for this year, or top 3 numbers with that 17 for this year, if that makes sense. So the upside's there. The health is always a risk. Well, I understand why you don't want to draft him, but now his ADP is where, it's in a range and I'm a lot more comfortable with than what it was last year. I guess even pre-injury.
Yep, that's a good segue for me as to why Cam Newton's in my 6th spot. He comes in our 7 consensus. A guy that I've traditionally hated on or not have very good things to say about, but his 16-game pace before injury had him just shy of 4,000 yards passing, 30-plus pass touchdowns, and he was completing passes at just shy of a 70% clip, which has always been my biggest knock on Cam Newton, which is he wasn't accurate. He had the legs, he had the floor, but he was going to boom and he was going to bust, and there was no consistency until last year before he got hurt. There was consistency, and he was first in play action completion and 5th in pressured completion, which is how he has to live because he's not behind a good offensive line, and he is mobile. There's a lot of things there to like about Cam Newton and for him to build on as a passer coming out of last year, which I think was even better as a thrower than his MVP season before the shoulder injury.
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I was taking a breath.
Oh, my bad.
His touchdown rate was the best since his MVP season. He has an improved receiving core with Olsen returning, DJ Moore entering another year, and Curtis Samuel actually showing he can be a wide receiver. And he still has the same rushing floor and upside as he was on pace to clear well over 100 attempts, 500 yards, and 5 touchdowns on the ground like he had in previous years. So he's going at the 902. So Cam Newton right now is at a place where I'm completely okay with drafting him because of the upside that's there and what he showed he could do as a passer last year, finally on a more consistent basis before he got hurt and then missed the last 2 games of the season. It's kind of the same story as Carson Wentz, just not as much upside as a pure passer.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't adjusted my rankings, or I should say adjusted. I haven't adjusted my points as much, or my projections since the news have come out that Cam is well on track to be able to play. This isn't an Andrew Luck shoulder type of situation from 2 years ago. So, Newton has his best receiving core he's had. I watched Matt Harmon guest spot on another podcast. I don't know if you guys know who Matt Harmon is. He does the reception perception. And he talked a lot about Curtis Samuel and his improvement. We'll talk more about him when we get to wide receivers. But he spoke about his massive improvement, which means Cam Newton's receiving core has probably the best that it's ever been. So I'm with you on Cam Newton. He's going to bump up my rankings for sure.
Well, with Cam Newton and Carson Wentz being as low as they are too, if they don't massively take a jump when normal people start drafting from the name cliche, I mean, that's a value where you can get both of them. You're going to get guys that are top 7 quarterbacks, where you're also going to get guys that are bottom, 15 to 20 quarterbacks in that same 3 to 4 round range. So gotta love that one. And then the other guy on this page, Russell Wilson. He's a guy that always finds a way to do it, but he'll give you heartburn while he does it. So I just want to talk about the risk associated with that real quick.
I mean, so we talked about touchdown rate, and quarterbacks cannot maintain an 8% touchdown rate. It's going to go with Wilson as well, but with Wilson is at a 6% touchdown rate for his career. He's posted 6+ in 3 of his last 4 seasons, so the touchdown upside's there. He's always it's the same, basically the same type of receivers. Instead of DK Metcalf, who now he gets his big, massive, Dez Bryant with speed, type of guy that he can, work downfield. Lockett gets to play, I think, in a role that he's been born for, and that's the new Doug Baldwin. So I think the one thing that's going to keep people from drafting Wilson late, and why we're a little more cautious on him, is his passing attempts. They're more down to where he was when he first came into the league, when the defense was when the defense was elite, the running game was elite. So if we're going to get Wilson of the last few years minus last year, the running game needs to take a step back. The defense needs to kind of not live past or live up to the expectations going into this year. So with you, I'm a little bit tepid, but Wilson's done it year in and year out for the most part, at least when it comes to that touchdown, that big play touchdown. It's just whether or not you want to take the risk of taking him. I think he's 6th or 7th round ADP right now.
Yeah, I've got him at 8.10.5 point from.
Okay, so it's not as okay.
So
Good. It's not
as bad. He is our quarterback 6, which is because he does it every year. But kind of just to tag on to what Dan mentioned, 215 yards a game, 427 pass attempts last season is not going to get it done outside of the touchdown rate, which was 8%. And for him to go back to what for the 2 years before that, where he was throwing up between 500 and 550 times, the defense has got to take a step back. The running game's got to take a step back. And Brian Schottenheimer probably needs to fall off a cliff, because that's what changed. They brought in a new offensive coordinator who's more run-centered. They are running the ball again more than they're passing it. And that makes Russell Wilson just a nightmare to watch week in and week out if he's your quarterback. It's like you have to have the confidence that he's going to find a way to do it because he's freaking magical. But, I mean, he's a unicorn, but he doesn't find a way to do it.
Yeah.
Or if the off chance he doesn't find a way to do it, he's just going to tank you.
Yeah.
So, but that's all we got for that tier. That was just missed the elite tier. Now we're going to move on to a man crush tier. So we both kind of have a Dak Prescott man crush. I've got a Jameis Winston man crush, and everybody seems to have a Baker Mayfield man crush. So go ahead. I'm going to let you spew the love for Dak. I'll take Jameis, and then we can both kind of do the same thing we just did with Wilson and talk about why Baker Mayfield isn't worth the 5th round ADP.
Yes.
6th round ADP.
So for me, Dak in years past has always been someone that us as a show have teamed to sell, had tend to sell or avoid because of his ADP, because of his lack of receiving core. They fixed that issue last year when they traded for Amari Cooper. Dak's yards per attempt went up from 6.9 to 7.72, so a full per attempt up with the Cooper trade. You get his completion percentage jumped from 69 or 61.9 to 70.4. So you got to see what the addition did to the team. The offense as a whole massively improved. The fact that he also adds in 6 rushing touchdowns, because that's what he's done every year since he's been into the NFL, you can kind of see why the love of Dak Prescott is there. The best part about this is that his ADP hasn't caught up to that yet, as he's the 17th QB drafted in the bottom of the 11th round. So there's massive value there. They added Randall Cobb, in my opinion, is an upgrade over Cole Beasley. You bring in Jason Wynn, who's a massive upgrade over whatever the fuck tight ends they threw out last year. And now you get a full offseason for Dak to get acclimated with Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup into the year 2, Randall Cobb, again, as a good slot possession, but can still stretch the field. Jason Wynn is everyone's safety blanket when he plays. So there's a lot to love with Dak, and especially given his ADP right now.
Yeah, there's nothing I have to say against Dak Prescott. I'm equally as high on him. So, moving on to Jameis Winston for me, he might have one of the best receiving groups in the game with Godwin and O.J. Howard, and then Cameron Brate. You got Mike Evans over there. He's got a lot of receivers.
Justin Watson,
who we liked athletically coming in. I mean, there's definitely options to like there. In addition to that, though, you don't got a strong run game there. Peyton Barber isn't chunking off 4 yards a 4.5 yards a carry or anything like that, and you don't have Ronald Jones, who really proved anything yet, and you got a defense that, I mean, as much as they say it's fixed, it's not fixed. And all of that coming together, the good receiving core, the not a strong run game, and the defense is going to equal volume. And that's also something we saw with Ben Roethlisberger and Carson Palmer in Bruce Arians' offenses is volume. Jameis Winston had nearly 3,000 passing yards in just 9 starts last season. He was on pace for 4,300 based on his yards per game. And you pull in the Arians effect with Jameis's touchdowns, which, by the way, Ben Roethlisberger is Jameis Winston's athletic comp on Player Profiler. But Ben dropped his touchdown rate his interception rate by 2.2% under Arians, while increasing his touchdown rate by 4%. Carson Palmer also had some similar and notable improvements, especially in the touchdown rate department. So while the interceptions are probably always still going to be there for Jameis, the volume, the receiving core, the lack of a decent defense, and the lack of a really good running game, I think is going to put a lot of volume in his court. I mean, we were hyping him up last year because he was the quarterback 1 at the end of the 2017 and over the last 6 or 7 weeks, I think. So, and then they started to monkey around with Patrick. Jameis comes back. He's a serviceable starter with a high interception rate. So, I mean, I think that the upside there is completely measurable. I'm completely buying into the Arians hype. He's got all the pieces around him to succeed, and if he doesn't succeed, then this is the last year you're going to hear this narrative come out of my mouth.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm starting to. I mean, I'm high. My rankings may not show it because I think his rushing floor is kind of, I think lost it. I think in terms of my projections, there wasn't a high rushing floor. I'm a little more concerned just with the fact that he got benched twice last year. But again, new coaching staff. There is no Ryan Fitzpatrick, behind him to even, push as a starter. I'll likely come up on my rankings for him as I continue to, to fine tune my projections. And then his 10th run ADP is great to see. I do expect that to go up. I don't know how much Jameis I'm going to own because of other quarterbacks. I just feel more comfortable drafting. But I will not be surprised if he leads, if he leads the league in passing attempts, leads the league in passing touchdowns, and also leads the league in passing interceptions. So
yep. For Jameis Winston, whether I draft him or not, it depends on if his ADP stays below 8th round.
Yeah, he's at the 10th round right now, which is
10-04.
I think where he should go. So
yep. If he stays there, I'm going to own a lot of him.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, and then on to Baker Mayfield, who is going at the 609. He's
too high.
Yeah, it is too high. He's my quarterback 11. He's the show's quarterback 10. Look, you added a lot. We love Baker Mayfield here. He's a year off of being elite. That's the way I see it. Is a year off. His ADP is a year ahead of where he is. And again, we love Baker. Dan said it a few times. We don't hate players. We hate ADP. I don't like this ADP for him. 2.9% interception rate. That's got to come down for him to justify this. 16 game pace last year was 32 touchdowns and 4,200 yards, which again, even with the rushing floor, that's not justifiable of a 6th round pick. I mean, that's right around where the guys that are being drafted in rounds 9 and 10 are producing at. Yes, you add Odell. That does help. But this isn't a team with a bad defense or a bad running game either. So I don't expect Odell to add a ton of volume for Baker. I expect him to take it away from Landry, but I don't expect him to add a ton for Baker. And just doesn't have the elite touchdown upside or the legs to break the top 5 yet. And the key word there is yet. I don't think it's this year. Is he a quarterback 1 this year? Yes, I'm completely sold on that. I'm not getting sold on the 6th round ADP though.
I mean, it's not even just a 6th round ADP that's already absurd. It's the fact that he's the 5th QB being drafted. Guys like Dak, Winston, even Wilson are being drafted ahead of him. Or I guess behind him, that are guys that I would take ahead of him. Newton will likely be right around that area for me when I bump him up. And it's just a volatile of what Baker is. Baker was very inconsistent at times last year. You saw it. He can go out there, throw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then follow that up with 250 yards and 3 picks. We love him here. He's a huge gunslinger. We love his upside. Let's see it first before we give him the elite top 3 to 5 ADP treatment that he's getting right now. To me, this is, Deshaun Watson of last year. in terms of you're massively overdrafting for what you're likely going to get out of him.
Yeah, if I'm a Baker Mayfield believer, I want him to fall to round 8 for me to
He could
be able to draft, for me to want to draft him, or for me to start thinking about him there, because there is upside there. I
Yeah,
can't take
of
that.
course there
There's
is.
absolutely upside there, but I need him to fall to about the 8th round before I buy into that, because I'm not going to give up on getting a third running back that I can flex in, or a wide receiver 3 in the 6th round for a guy that I don't project to be a top 6 quarterback.
I'm not going to get the value in my return.
Yep.
Not at that ADP.
Yep. All right, that covers Jameis, Dak, Baker. Kind of the main crush tier. We both love Dak. I love Jameis, and Baker Mayfield we want to love, but he's still earning that from us.
We still love you, Bayfield. We still love you.
We do. On to the man tier. These are kind of the guys that aren't exciting, aren't flashy, likely aren't gonna crack out of this tier, but are gonna be solid and can likely be had cheap. Ben Roethlisberger, Matt Ryan, Jared Goff. Is there anything you'd like to say about any of them?
Jared Goff is Matt Ryan when he's with Sean McVay in offense. Big Ben and Matt will likely lead the league in top 5 in passing attempts. And there will be a very good super flex quarterback option, either your QB1 or QB2. No rushing floor is likely why they're here.
For any of the 3, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me with Big Ben, I want to see what life is going to be like for him post Brown leaving. I love Juju. Juju is my highest projected receiver and based on points per game. So, but that's still a massive piece that you just lost, and with no real return from it. So I like to see it. That's what I have to say about this tier.
Yep. I'm going to talk about Jared Goff for a second. So,
Sure.
Matt Ryan, Ben Roethlisberger, you know what you're getting. Ben, yes, you got to see how Brown affects him. If I had to guess, not too much, because Juju's kind of anointed there, and there's you bring in Dante Moncrief, who we know is at least serviceable. He was in Jacksonville last year, so. But Jared Goff, if you're projecting 3 wide receivers in the top 24, which is where most people have Cooks, Kupp, and Woods, then you've got to be high on Jared Goff. Otherwise, your rankings don't make sense. 5.5% touchdown rate, 2.1% pick rate over the last 2 years, over 4,500 yards last year. That's all very, very sustainable. There's nothing there that's blowing you away that you say, well, he can't keep that up. He had 8 games over 300 yards, 6 with 3 or more touchdowns, which says he's going to win you weeks. And the team really does still lack a good secondary. You've got Gurley, who I think they're going to be more cautious with, despite the reports that he's okay, which means that there's a chance that they're leaning on Jared Goff a little bit more than what they have in the past. So, I mean, I'm completely comfortable with Jared Goff being the back-end quarterback 1, given the 3 wide receivers and what we've seen out of him so far.
Yep, I agree.
All right, let's hit a beer review, and then we'll get to the less exciting portion of things.
Beer review.
All right, Dan. Strawberry M43. What did you think?
It's incredible. Basically, if you haven't had M43 before, it's a lot like most other New England styles. Very juicy up front, no bitterness, not a lot of booze from it. It's very fluffy. It's very acidic. You throw in strawberry in there, makes it a little more tart. It's not like a fruit ale or anything like that. It's extremely good. It's hard to really just describe it, but it's basically just strawberry added to a really good New England style. So, yay.
All right, for four hands unconventional, my advice for this would be drink it a little warmer, a little closer to room temperature than just out of the fridge. It's a nitro IPA, so when I first broke it out, it was ice cold, just fresh out of the fridge, and I was not happy because there was vanilla, very prominent, which I like vanilla, but there was bitterness and there was no carbonation to it whatsoever. And to me, I prefer the nitro in kind of my stouts or my porters or things that have flavors that lend more to a creamier mouthfeel, and bitter is not one of them. But the more it warmed up, the carbonation kind of came to life a little bit and offset some of that bitterness some, which I think made it an overall more pleasant drink. It's very, very good. I'm not sure what experimental hops they used because it does have a really good balance between like tropical and bitterness. Very tropical up front, very bitter on the back end. Vanilla lingers throughout. But the carbonation being activated from that warming up a little bit was key to making it pleasant versus just a really, really weird drink because of the nitro.
It sounds interesting. I do want to try it. It sounds like because if it's a tropical bitter mix, it sounds a little bit like a Midwest hop combined
It's like a Midwest,
with
hazy.
with like a West Coast style. If it's going to be more on that bitter end, but the nitro is what really makes it unique.
Yeah, the nitro is interesting to me because again, I don't know, you don't normally see that in IPAs. And again, I thought that this nitro and vanilla is good. I like the smoothness with the vanilla. Nitro and bittering hop, not good. So once the carbonation started to come out, I was a lot happier with it.
Interesting.
All right, that's all we got for today. Thank you very, very much, Old Nation and Forehand/Trophy, for giving us some unique and overall delicious beers to try. Well, not giving us, we purchased them. But anyway, brewing them. We appreciate your community service.
Yes.
All right, moving on to this
work out there.
Yeah. Moving on to the streamer tier, this is positions 14 through 17 in our rankings. We got Mitchell Trubisky, Kyler Murray, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees. So one thing that's going to jump out to a lot of people is how low Tom Brady and Drew Brees are. These are guys that 2-3 years ago are going in the 5th and 6th round and are elite fantasy quarterbacks and surefire things, but they're no longer that. They're no longer safe, and they're no longer worth the high picks. So for Tom Brady, he's got a 4-year decline in yards per game, a 3-year decline in completion percentage, a 3-year increase in his interception rate. And the league's just kind of caught him in terms of yardage and upside and mobility. It's like with the way the league's turned into a passing league, it's like almost everybody's throwing for 4,000 plus yards and 30 touchdowns, and Tom Brady's not the only one doing it anymore.
I mean, the Patriots are pretty predictable when it comes to their play calling when the game script kind of leans in a certain way. Obviously, if a team's behind, they're going to throw a lot, but the Patriots will really hammer down on their run game when they have a lead, when they feel like they don't need to put up a lot of points. And you're going to lose that from Brady. You see it almost the last 3 years, if you've mentioned, Brady he just isn't a draft him, no backups, and just throw him in your lineup every week and trust that he's going to give you at least a back in QB1 finish. What we saw last year is a guy that could throw 300 something yards, which he's always thrown a bunch of yards, but the touchdowns have really come down. Gronk being banged up hurt that. You lose Gronk completely now with him retiring. Yes, you draft N'Keal Harry, which we love, but he's a rookie receiver. Josh Gordon suspended. So now it's just Julian Edelman and a bunch of fucking guys there because Chris Hogan's now in Carolina. So
and Demaryius Thomas has an Achilles problem.
Is likely going to be on the PUP list if not longer. I mean, yes, Achilles. We've seen people come back from Achilles tears at rapid rates that make no sense, but it's still a very significant injury. And Thomas is 31 years old, guy that really needed a guy that would win based on his athleticism, not on his nuance as a route runner. So I don't see him, aging well, which again turns back
the
into
same thing with Dez. Didn't age well.
Exactly, like just like this. It's Brady just doesn't have the weapons. Yes, he still has James White and Julian Edelman, which we both love, but that's not going to be enough to propel him as a guy you can trust week in and week out, and somebody I don't really even look to draft.
Yeah, and then what the interesting thing to me was a split between Brady and Brees, who we'll get to in a minute. Tom Brady's going at the 10-12. Okay, fine with that. Drew Brees is going at the 705.
I don't okay, so as someone who was massively in love with Brees last year, it was paid off the first 4 weeks when the defense sucked. And you saw this shift happen when Mark Ingram came back and the defense got a lot better and buckled down. You got to see what really his future is, and that's the game manager. He's basically become Phillip Rivers as this Asian quarterback who doesn't quite have it, and he's not asked or called upon to take over games because he doesn't need to. Yes, you lose Mark Ingram, but you bring in Latavius Murray, who's just fine. And yes, you should have a better receiving core with a second-year Traquan Smith, a tight end coming back healthy. You bring in Jared Cook, who's your most athletic tight end you've had since Jimmy Graham, or since Kobe Fleener, really, because Fleener completely destroyed the combine. But the passing attempts are not going to justify Brees being an elite quarterback. You would need Brees to become Russell Wilson in terms of his touchdown rate, in terms of some rushing floor,
He's never
which you
been
won't.
that.
Exactly.
All the peripherals around Brees, unlike Brady, who's seen consistent decreases, are still good. Yards per game, yards per completion, yards per attempt, touchdown rate, interception rate. Everything on Brees is still good. He is not declining in any underlying metric, but it's the fact that he's been under 550 pass attempts the last 2 years because of the ascension of the defense and because of, really, since Kamara was drafted, the
Yeah.
ascension of the running game. They haven't had to lean on him, and they're not going to. It's not going to start again this year. If they get in a shootout, he can still do it. He's going to be streamable for some weeks, but most weeks the defense is going to be able to lock down. The running game is going to be able to move the football. Brees is going to do what he needs to get done. The Saints are going to be playing from ahead, and they're fine.
Yeah.
And yeah, kind of like Brady, the league's caught him, but not as much. Brees, in the years where he was elite, he was throwing the ball 620 plus times, and that's not happening anymore.
Yeah. It's just not there. I love Brees, and I will always like Brees as a fantasy quarterback, but this defense will need to take a massive step back for me to really fall back in love with them.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the other two are kind of, one guy who is on the other way and another guy who we fully expect to be joining the ascension. Let's start with Kyler Murray. He's going at the 801. He's another guy whose draft capital I can't necessarily justify.
No.
But I see the upside there. Like, I projected him with a ton of upside.
Yeah, it's insane because it's I have him, I think in points per game, I have him as my QB8. He's my QB, I think 15, just because he's a rookie. The league we don't really know what the air raid offense is going to look like when it's a full-time type of play calling. We get to see their main concepts and four verts and mesh concepts be used by all teams or most teams, and they're fairly successful at times, but not as the main play style, or I guess the main play calling. Murray's fantastic. It's tough to not root. It's tough to root against him, but as you just said, with his ADP, it's tough to justify not having to take another quarterback later on in the draft, just in case if Murray struggles, which I fully expect at times, because it's not just a new quarterback; it's a new system. You still have new receivers. Yes, you have Fitz and Kurt as is 1 and 2, but we're going to have to see how this all works out. We're going to have to see if the NFL is going to catch up to this, I guess, more quickly than it did with Chip Kelly when he brought the super high speed offense, because the Cardinals are going to be up there in terms of plays ran or in terms of offensive plays ran in the league. And Murray could very well end up being a top 5 QB in attempts.
Yeah, Murray's upside is that of a QB5. His downside is that of a QB20. And that's the part that makes it rough for me, because you don't really know. You got an offensive coordinator with very, very limited history. You got a head coach with no NFL history who was good offensively in college. And a quarterback who obviously set the world on fire, but you got a bad offensive line, which works against and for Murray. It's going to hurt his ability to throw, but it's going to allow him to get outside of the pocket and use his legs, which he runs like a running back.
Yep.
And when I projected Murray, you know this, and anybody that listened to the AFC or the NFC West preview knows this, but I took the aggregate of Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield, Russell Wilson's final college years, first NFL year, and projected that onto Murray. It put him at a 3.1% interception rate, 5.6% touchdown rate after I tempered it a little bit, and right around 100 rush attempts. So the upside's there. It's really, really good, but there's a lot of risk there too, to where I'm not spending an 8th-round pick on Kyler Murray. If he were a late-round flyer that I paired with a guy like, I don't know, Trubisky, who's going in the 13th, who we'll talk about in a second, or a Phillip Rivers, who's going in the 10th, or a Tom Brady, then I would be fine with that. But at the 8th round, I'm not. I wouldn't be surprised if he lives up to that, but the odds are not ever in his favor there.
I guess for me, it's yes, the defense is going to suck, so they're going to have to do a whole lot on offense to keep up in games. It's enough for me, though. It's a bit harder for me because it's this offense would have to take a massive leap. You would have to trust that Cliff Kingsbury could turn what the Rams were pre-Sean McVay and then post-Sean McVay. That's what you're expecting from Cliff. That's what a lot of analysts, I think, are expecting from the Cardinals, is this offense is just going to ascend to this top 10 level. And there's going to be weeks and stretches during the season where they're going to look great. There's also going to be stretches and games in this season that they're going to struggle and look like shit. And you just can't draft Murray and just trust him as your only quarterback. So I do agree with you that you're going to have to draft him with somebody else. And you're also passing up on some really good flex options,
especially at
given
the
where
wide receiver.
especially wide receiver, even running backs. There's some good pass catchers that are even going that late.
Yep.
If you if you go the zero RB route, it's just hard for me to justify or see a lot of teams wanting to draft Kyler Murray in that round, or I guess in that range when there's other quarterbacks within that range that have already done it.
Right. All right, moving on. Mitchell Trubisky. So this is a guy that I think he's going as a 1308. To me, he just needs to continue the trajectory. Touchdown rate improved by 3.4%. 6 touchdown game obviously didn't hurt that. The interception rate did go the wrong way, but his yards per game increased by 50. He found his legs with 400 plus rush yards. He was 7th in points per drop back. The wide receivers were separating for him. They were 13th. 6th in play action per completion, which is how he's used mostly. And he was top 10 in most rush metrics. So, I mean, there's a lot of good building blocks there for Mitchell Trubisky. You just got to, as long as he continues to progress in the Matt Nagy offense, he's going to ascend up into that quarterback one tier. I'm not quite fully sold with some of the other guys ahead of him that he is for sure going to do that. That's why he's down here in the streamer tier. But he did show you a lot of improvements last year that gives you some confidence that he can continue to build on that going forward.
I mean, he projected well for me because of his rushing upside. No one really expected it, but then all of a sudden you see him getting nearly 500 yards on 68 attempts, adding 4 touchdowns. That number should really not change, just given the offense really hasn't changed much in terms of his philosophy. He should improve year 2 with Matt Nagy. You have Allen Robinson coming off of a full season off of his ACL injury. You have Anthony Miller, who should hopefully be completely healthy to start the year. Doesn't matter because you play through all the pains and grains anyways. You add in a lot of playmakers and David Montgomery, Cordero Patterson, and guys alike that'll help spread and open the field up more, giving them a lot bigger windows to throw into. Trey Burton and Adam Shaheen are 2 tight ends I like and that you can use within this offense. So again, this is a make or break year, I think, for me when it comes to Trubisky. Is he going to be Blake Bortles, or can he ascend further beyond and become more of a Cam Newton type of guy where you won't get the rushing for, but become a better passer?
Yeah. I agree with all that. And it is, the Bortles comparison is a good one because if he's Bortles that can throw, then he's going to ascend up beyond, I think, even what Cam Newton was his first few years, because we know Trubisky's accurate. He was in college. And even at the NFL, he's shown that he's accurate. It's just, year 1, bad coaching, didn't have the receivers to separate. So year 2, you see improvements there. Year 3, you kind of want to see it all come together for him. And if it does, I think we're talking about a guy that finishes top 8.
Yep. That's why I have him high.
Yep. All right, that's really it for that tier. There's one more tier that we're going to spend a lot of time on. And then after that, we'll just kind of throw out some names. This is going to be our 18 through 22. It's the Philip Cousins honorary Jimmy Garoppolo run for your points tier.
This is my favorite name for a tier. I read that when I saw your notes and I bursted out laughing. I was like, that is fucking perfect.
Yeah, because it's Philip Rivers, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, or Kirk Cousins, Philip Rivers, Jimmy Garoppolo, and then Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, who are going to run for their points. So, first off, let's talk Rivers for a second, though. There's a lot of analysts out there and a lot of hype that I'm seeing on Twitter that says Rivers is this amazing late round pick. And I'm not necessarily buying into that narrative that if I'm picking in the 10th round, Philip Rivers is the guy I want there.
No, I mean, just a reduction in his passing attempts. We got to see what this team wants to be. They're like the LA Rams too. I guess maybe the same city kind of changes it. Makes your philosophy the same because they want to run the football, through Melvin Gordon. Their defense is, I think, is up in that elite tier when they're all healthy. And you got to see it through stretches last year. They don't really need to call upon Philip Rivers. He wasn't somebody that needs to throw the football 35 plus times a game for them to win games. They want to rely on that running game, and they want to rely on their defense to do that, and then have Rivers kind of be the guy that they fall on if needed, or just kind of keep leading the offensive line. Um, those attempts could change, especially if Melvin Gordon gets his wishes or doesn't get his wish, and then shit happens. That completely changes. But I think if just given what we expect from this team from last year, Rivers won't be a QB1. He'll fall more into that upper streamer tier, give you a little bit more consistent weeks. But he likely won't give you the upside that you're looking for when it comes to drafting a quarterback.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's concerning to me. One, it is the 505 pass attempts. Two, I think the touchdown rate comes back to normal. He was a full percent higher than his career average, 0.3 versus 5.3. Completion percent was also up by 4+ points over his career average. I think that comes down as well. Once you fade all that, it's just another guy that is going to be at 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. He's been right there for 6 seasons, right around 30 touchdowns and 4,000 yards. But he's just been surpassed by so many people that are either throwing more and up in that 42 to 4,500 yard range and 30 touchdown range, or that have some form of running floor, even if it's 100 to 200 yards a season. That's better than Philip Rivers' 9. So that's what's surpassing him from a fantasy perspective, and is what's putting him down here. It's not the arm, because 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns isn't really anything to sneeze at, but it's just that he's been surpassed in so many other areas, and I don't expect him to go up at this point in age. I expect him to regress to the norm.
Yeah.
That I can't buy into the fact that he's this amazing shoe in the hole late round pick over, some other guys.
He's going to give you consistency. I think he's being pumped up. You can draft, let's say you draft Kyler Murray in the 8th round. You can pair him with Philip Rivers and feel comfortable and actually feel pretty good about it, because you have your consistency matched with your with your massive upside play. It's just Rivers right now is in the 10th round, and that's a little bit too soon to draft your second quarterback, in my opinion.
Yeah, same. That's right before your kicker in defense.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins is kind of ditto the same story. I'm not going to spend a lot of time there.
No, we don't need to.
We don't need to. Jimmy Garoppolo. So this is a guy that was being hyped up around the Baker Mayfield level last year, and it is completely gone to nowhere. And it just goes to show that hype shows up, and then you move on to the next thing, and, well, hype isn't there anymore. He had a good touchdown rate, not a great interception rate. But where did the hype go?
It went with his matching interception to touchdown interception ratio, which is a bit concerning. I think it was 7 touchdowns to 5 picks since he joined the San Francisco 49ers. Doesn't really have an elite wide receiver, though we love Dante Pettis and we obviously love George Kittle, and we see a lot of good things in Deebo Samuel based on his tape, but we need to more or less see it. We need him to actually play in a full season. We need to see what the chemistry is actually like when he plays at least 10 games with these guys out there. And just the fact is, it doesn't have super high rushing floor, as I think as many people thought that he would have. And he's going to be, the good thing is he's going to be playing from behind from a lot, but he hasn't really thrown the football a lot on a per game basis, which again, also it's a little bit concerning when you're looking for a high upside quarterback. You're getting one that doesn't have the passing attempts to back that just yet. I think a lot of people are just projecting him at a ceiling, whereas at least for me, I need to see it there first. I need to not try to buy into the hype that we saw last year. I'm glad that he's going in the 12th round. He's basically just a pick your quarterback at that point. I'm not quite there yet.
Nope, I'm right there with you. I will say that Jimmy Garoppolo and Josh Allen probably have the most upside out of anybody in this tier. Josh Allen's obviously got the legs. He's got the cannon for an arm. He's got to prove he can be accurate with that arm. But we saw him last year kind of break out with the legs and really be really, really good at throwing the deep ball, especially with Robert Foster specifically. But I think those are the two that you look at in this tier as potentially having something.
I still like Kirk Cousins.
Rivers, you know what they are. Well, I like them both too.
I love Kirk Cousins, especially now because his ADP was probably a bit too high last year. Now it's fallen way back. Just given his receivers, just given with a healthy Dalvin Cook, the offensive line can't get any worse. So I expect a little more improvement, but there is obviously cautionary concern there, just given the lack of passing when
Well, and if I'm taking a
was his
second
face to
quarterback, I would love for it to be Kirk Cousins or Phillip Rivers.
Yeah,
But the odds of me drafting
exactly.
a second quarterback are probably not.
Yeah.
If I am, I'm not drafting it for a floor guy. I'm drafting it for upside because I already took a floor guy.
Yep.
Um,
I can agree with that.
as far as Lamar Jackson, I don't have anything good to say about him. He's gonna be your RB2 with his legs.
I mean, if he improves, like I think with Jackson, I think this receiving core is actually potentially better than what people think it is. There's actually some cohesion there with Miles Boykin, Brown if he can stay healthy. Sneed's okay at times. That's I guess the highest praise anyone will ever give to a receiving core in Baltimore right now. But it, the rushing is there for Jackson. If the passing can catch up, I think you could have a QB1 season from him, and I see why people love his upside. Thankfully, his ADP isn't high enough, so if you like him, you can get him almost for free. But again, I'm with you. I'm not there on him, so
Yep. All right, that's it for that tier. The last tier that we have here is kind of there's actually multiple tiers here, but everyone just kind of sucks like a combined tier. As in, there were multiple tiers here when I ranked them, but for the sake of this show, they're all in one tier. Sam Darnold's a guy I want to talk about. I'm going to stop here, and then we'll just kind
please.
of run through the rest. So, Sam Darnold's a guy I think has upside. I think you're going to see him go on the Mitch Trubisky trajectory. We saw him gain some rapport with Robbie Anderson. He's still very, very young. We saw him start to kind of come out of his shell last year as a quarterback. There's a new coaching staff there. He does have weapons around him. You bring in Le'Veon Bell. It's going to take some of the pressure off of him to perform. He's a guy that I think will ascend this year. If I am looking for that upside guy late in my drafts, he's a guy that I would love to take a throw on. I don't think he quite get up to that year or to that level we're talking about it as a streamer. But I think he kind of follows the Mitch Trubisky trajectory where, we're going to be talking about him this year and what he's flashed, and then next year he's probably going to be up in those high teens as far as ranking.
Yeah, I mean, like I wouldn't be surprised if he took a Jared Goff type of leap. I mean, obviously the coaching staff isn't where the coaching staff and the play calling isn't on Sean McVay's level, but Darnold's got a lot of talent. He was also the youngest quarterback in the draft last year. He posted the highest QBR, I think, in the month of December. So there's definitely growth that has been shown. You bring in Le'Veon Bell, you bring in Jamison Crowder to help improve this passing game. Yes, Chris Herndon's out for 4 weeks due to suspension, but Herndon really was more of their like fourth, fifth, or their third or fourth target. At that point, the rise of Robbie Anderson, if he can remain healthy and stay out of trouble, Darnold could take a massive jump. And I agree with you on that Trubisky type of level. You can even see him reach the Jared Goff back in QB1 level. Darnold is one of my favorite late round flyers, especially in super draft or especially in super flex leagues.
Yep, I'm right there with you. As far as the rest of them, Andy Dalton, Matthew Stafford, I don't really care about. Derek Carr, real quick on him. He also was weirdly good at the deep ball, and you add in Antonio Brown and Tyrell Williams. I do think you kind of see him take a jump back towards maybe where he was a couple of years ago. I mean, he's not going to be up there where he's relevant, but I think he's going to have some streamable weeks. Beyond that, I don't really have anything to say with this tier.
No, 27 Mariota, 28 Foles, 29 Flacco, 30 Haskins. I think when you get to this point, it doesn't matter where they're ranked. You just kind of pick your guy. I think Dalton and Stafford could give you a serviceable week, especially in super flex leagues. That's your third quarterback, which is where I think they should be drafted. Bengals offense should be a lot better than what they were. They're actually pretty good before everyone got hurt. Stafford, I'm not totally buying into the Darrell Bevel is going to run that whole running game to the fucking ground, as you saw in his last couple of years with Seattle, when the running game really wasn't there for him. Wilson did have to throw the football 550 plus times. So Stafford's not quite dead. I think you can get him a really good value.
Nope, he's not quite dead. He's another one that I think has some streamable weeks. Beyond Haskins, Manning, Tannehill, Fitzpatrick, Rosen, Jones, Locke, Keenum, Manning, Fitzpatrick, obviously opening the seasons as starters, and everybody else are just guys that has a potential to start at some point during the, even though there's no significant expectations for them.
Nope.
All right. Real quick, I'm gonna throw the rankings up on the YouTube screen. Another reason to watch there. We'll run through them again here real quick. So, our in a tier of his own, Patrick Mahomes. Beyond that, the rest of the elite: Andrew Luck, Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers. Just missed, kind of just outside of that tier: Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson, Cam Newton. Uh, Man crush tier. These are guys that we're particularly high on, or in one guy's case, a guy we like dynasty wise, but shouldn't be that high yet. Jameis Winston, Dak Prescott, Baker Mayfield are 8 through 10. 11 through 13, Roethlisberger, Ryan Goff. That's kind of the Met tier.
Brian
That's
Goff.
yeah.
That's so good.
That's
Matt
kind of the
Jared.
Met tier. That's where a lot of the high-end passing talent's going to be, but not a lot of rushing floor. You get beyond that to the streamer tier. You've got Trubisky and Kyler Murray, who both have upside. Brady and Brees, who both are on the downside. The Philip Cousins honorary Jimmy Garoppolo run for your points tier is kind of your last-ditch quarterback tier. That's going to give you consistent, usable points. Kirk Cousins, Philip Rivers, Jimmy Garoppolo, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. That they're your 18 through 22. And then your 23 through 37, Darnold, Dalton, Stafford, Carr, Mariota, Foles, Flacco, Haskins, Manning, Tannehill, Fitzpatrick, Rosen, Jones, Locke. All right, that's all we got. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next week to talk about running backs and more of a rapid fire kind of name your my guys act type of episode. Reminder for the listener league, we are opening up I'll call it tomorrow when the tweet goes out. We're opening up registration for that. So send us a screenshot of you subscribed on YouTube or subscribing to YouTube for one entry into that drawing. Buy merch or buy Midwest FF Expo ticket with promo code BEER to get yourself 2 entries into that. Send us screenshots of everything at BeerfieldFF on Twitter, or to myself at HotBFF on Twitter, or to Dan at ThurryBFF on Twitter. You could try to Facebook us, but it might not go that well. Beerfield Fantasy Football, Instagram, Beerfield FF. Like and subscribe on YouTube for all of the graphical content and wonderful faces of us at Beerfield Fantasy Football. Yeah, we'll be back next week. Running backs. Dan, say goodbye.
Bye.